Thank you. I'm so pleased everybody could join us today, and I hope that very shortly you're going to be going away with some very good information about how to improve your powerful presentations. Nowadays, it's one of the most important skills that anybody could have in all walks of life, whether it's for your career or for your that over 82% of people have a fear of speaking. And that was a survey done in America, speaking in their own language. So sometimes when you're speaking in a second language, it's really scary. So there are ways and means of making things a lot easier. And some of the rules make life just that little bit easier. One of the things I often get asked is about where to start. Now, this is different if you're presenting for your company, if you've already been given something, a plan or a product that needs to be developed. But obviously, you start from the same point because there's 3 specific areas that you're going to be working on and following the path from starting in the plan, preparing, and of course, practice. The plan comes from all sorts of places. You can think about your own ideas from yourself, your friends, your colleagues, acquaintances, families, your environment, experience, research. There's just a few there. But when you start looking at what you have to produce, you can get ideas from all sorts of places. Your family. We all have these families with all sorts of different people in. So very often you can find a family member or a friend that will actually bring out a point for you. And making it human also makes it a lot easier for other people to understand. So sometimes it's easier to tell a short story and put in the information in. Within the content area, you have to first identify a problem. Even if you're going to be talking about a product, what is this product going to solve for the person? The first thing that anybody asks themselves when they're sitting, maybe like yourselves now, in a webinar, what's in it for me? All of your audiences are going to be asking themselves the same question. So this is why it has to be very focused at the audience and their needs and how you are going to solve their problem or their situation, or you're going to make it better. So that is a very important area, and making it you focused rather than I focused, because they're not really interested if you have 10 degrees and 25 years of experience. What they're interested in is how is that going to help them or get them doing what they want to do. You also need to look at the effects of the problem. So around them and how their life would be different if they didn't have that situation. Whatever it might be, whether it's a product, whether it's your idea, if you're putting it to your team because you're managing a particular area in a company, if you are asking them to change something, just telling them they need to change isn't going to make them want to change. But if you show that if this is the way things have been done and these are the effects that it causes you, doing it another way, these are the good effects that are going to come from it. So you make it viable for them to make the effort of wanting to change rather than just insisting on what you're going to do. The solution, obviously this is really what you want to come across anyway, but instead of looking at, oh, this is me, I've sorted this, I've got this, again, you focus it on what is going to benefit them. The outcome, whether it's a save of time, whether it's a save of money, whether it's making life easier, more flexible. So the content really looks at identifying the effect and everything that has to do with the people involved. Not just because you're saying, because I say so, or because the company wants it done. Put it across a lot easier than that. One of the things you do learn is creativity is messy. You are sitting now looking at these screens, and it looks very neat and tidy, and the writing is there and the colours, so it makes it easy on the eye. But this is not where you start. You always start with pen and paper and lots of it, and put it everywhere. So you can start with your premise, which is your main idea, whichever is easier to remember. So the premise, your main idea, what you want to get across. So this is where you start from. So once you've looked at the benefits for the people that are going to receive it, what is the main idea? And then from there, you're going to go and look at the supporting information and use relevant details and, of course, stories. One of the things I have found here in Saudi Arabia is many people don't read. From young people, they're not involved in stories. But everybody likes movies, and Hollywood is the biggest inventor everywhere of stories. But they can tell the same story over and over again, but with a different director and different actors. People will watch the same story 5,000 times. So don't worry about your stories. Think about the stories that will fit in, and you can adapt the characters or the situations to what is relevant to what you want to be working and writing about. And then you put these pieces together. It's a little bit like a jigsaw. You can sit down and you can put the pieces of the jigsaw out, and then you start bringing it together. And this is long before you even think about writing or putting everything together logically. Just get your pieces of ideas and then start to spread them, forms a pattern that you are then going to follow, and you can take it through on a pathway. One of the things we deal with a lot is language, and I must admit, one of the things I forgot to say at the beginning, obviously I am British and my English is my first language. I do know what it's like to present in a second language because I present in Spanish as well. But if you are having any difficulty following, or if I'm speaking a little bit quick, please just drop us a note and I'll get the message, and I can slow down and go back over anything if you need me to. So I do realise sometimes that not everybody is keeping up with me. But when we're looking at language, we have types of words. We have skinny words and we have fat words. Now, you might not be familiar with this content, but basically, when you are delivering to an audience, first of all, you have to know who your audience is. Now, if you are delivering to an audience of your colleagues, so you are in the same environment, then it's very likely you can use what we call as jargon, in-house words. But be very careful with those if you are dealing with people from outside your own industry, because words can mean things very different in one area for another. For example, in my background with education, if we talk about a TA, we're talking about a teacher's assistant. But if I'd been talking to military personnel, they would be thinking about territorial army. So just be very aware of who you're talking to and what their knowledge is, because if it's different to yours, then you need to make things a little bit clearer, rather than unless you introduce the words or the abbreviations, and then you can tell them exactly what they are and they can follow it through with you. It's an important point to remember. Also, when you're presenting to different levels, if it's a general level overall, then you need to keep the information quite general. You can do your explanation, but don't go down into nitty-gritty technical terms, because you will lose your audience. Whereas if you are a technician and you are then presenting to people on your same level, then it is fine. You can use your technical words because you know that they're going to be there with you. But the very basic thing, you do not want to lose your audience. You want to take them with you on the journey that you are going through. So picking your words is really important. Again, coming back to English as a second language, If you have a lot of general people and the audience and the culture is very mixed, then again, look at picking your words and your phrases, because in English we have a lot of phrasal verbs which really sort of play on meaning. If your audience isn't following that, it will seem, especially when a large part of the audience is laughing or they see a joke and some of them don't. So just be a little bit careful about where you're looking at leveling your vocabulary and your words of people, because then you will take your audience with you instead of losing them. So going to the outline, there's 3 areas that you're going to use to start with. Your first one is your premise. As I said, this is your key. So you really, when you start getting down to looking at what you want to say, what is your message, you want to try and write your premise in 3 to 10 words. You're not just going to present it like this, but one of the problems I see an awful lot with people when they are presenting to peers and groups as well is the fact that they aren't really clear on what they are saying. So if you are not clear on what you're saying, then how is your audience going to be clear? So you really need to be clear on exactly what message you are giving and what you want to come out of it. And with you having that certainty, it will come across, because they will then know what you're talking about as well. Right. I call it points of wisdom. You can put supporting ideas, you can put add-ons. It doesn't matter what you call it, but what you're going to do then is you are going to support it. So whatever your premise is, you are then going to go and find really precise information that supports your premise. You can find these if it's in your company, things that are going on within the company. If it's a product, where the product's been used before, you can get some testimonials on it. You can put some information in. Or if it's an idea or a thought that you are presenting as a speech, then again, you can get quotes from other people and you can get the information. A bit like a funnel. So your premise is at the top, your points of wisdom come down, and then you're going to come to an example that really shows. And this is where you can use some stories. Stories don't have to be long. They can be 30 seconds, just showing an example of what you are presenting. And then from that point, you use a seamless transition. Now, if you're not really understanding what a seamless transition means, when we change from one point to another, it's very easy when you are writing, because first of all you write your topic sentence, then you're writing your supporting sentence, and you have your concluding sentence, and that's a paragraph. And when that paragraph is finished, you miss a line and you go on to the next paragraph. This is exactly the same sort of thing that we're doing here. You're building each section and then we get on to the next. One of the things you can use from a transition is you can use the linkage of one idea to another. You can actually move from one place to another, or you can finish and use silence. Silence in speaking is very, very powerful, and a lot of people are quite afraid of it because they're not sure what to do with it. So when you're thinking about your transitions, it might be that you've made a point, you want your audience to think about that point, and giving them that amount of silence actually lets them take in the words that you're talking and the message that you're giving. Because if you keep talking and keep talking, sometimes they don't have time to keep up with you. So it's not a bad thing to work into your time some silence as well. It helps. It helps your audience to keep up. Is the most powerful and start of your presentation. I always, when I'm mentoring people, I would always say script your opening. Actually physically write your opening. And this is the one that you memorize and internalize without any shadow of a doubt. Because as soon as you've got yourself really, really solid with your opening, you've already relaxed and you've started on your presentation, and it will start to flow. So scripting your opening and knowing exactly what it is gives you a lot more confidence to actually then progress through. You can start with many things: a rhetorical question, a statistic, a problem, anything that really grabs people's imagination, because you want to get the audience from the beginning. So, for example, you could use, imagine if I were to ask you, if you had been able to be with me, and then give them a date, something like this. You want them with you from the start of the journey. So you want them to pick up right from word one. You don't want to be talking about 10 minutes before they've actually caught up with you. So, did you know that all of the things that we carry around with us every single day weigh more than 3 pounds, and our brain only weighs 3 pounds? So a statistic, something that then takes them with you and thinks, oh, I'm interested in this, I'm going to go on this journey. And you can show again the effect on the individual or the company, and you can point out where the pleasure or the pain. So, have you been suffering these last 3 years with with the terrible photocopier that we've had? It's already, because they're in agreement with you, they already know about it. And one of the important things is to get to the point. And this is especially important if you are delivering to senior management and CEOs and things like this, because their time is absolutely minimal. So if you do not get to the point, you will be finding that they're looking at their watches, they're getting very shifty. And I'm sorry, but this day and age, people do not have the same courtesies, feeling that I must sit here and listen to it through. They will get up and they will walk out. So if you, especially with the higher end of the managers and CEOs you are presenting to, get to the point very quickly. Make your introduction snappy and then get to the point. Many people ask me about notes. Now, if you are going as a professional speaker, then normally notes are the first thing that you have to get rid of. But if you are presenting to your company, if you're presenting your idea, then even at an interview, then it's quite acceptable to have your notes there. It's not acceptable to have your nose in the notes, so you cannot focus on anybody around you. So what you need to do if you have notes is just don't make them reams and reams of paper, because if you've written everything out, you will get, or anything like this is not a huge problem. But the interaction is the key to keeping your audience with you. The body of your presentation is where you use your information and support your topic, but keep it relevant. I've seen an awful lot of people have a really good start, then when they get into the information, they go off on a story, but it's totally not relevant. So make sure you pack everything. So when you are building this at the beginning, the messy part, when you are picking out what you're going to put in, then you pick out everything that fits together. And that way it keeps the chain moving. And also, it's a bit like taking a train. If you're taking a train from one city to another, that train stays on the tracks. Yeah, it might go off onto the sidings and pull into a station, but then it comes back and it stays on the same journey. What it doesn't do is sort of just wander off and think, oh, we'll go to this town today, and perhaps this time we'll go to another town. That's what you need to keep in mind, the train tracks, when you are preparing the body of your information. And also, when you do it, don't go on at a tangent. You can keep your topic and you can keep the information. to the minimum. As long as they have an idea, they have following of what you're actually talking about. And I've just put on there again about presenting to senior management, keep it brief, because their time is gold, really. The close of your presentation is, again, one of my mentors, who is Miss Patricia Fripp, and a very well-known public speaker. One of the things she always says is, last words linger. And this is very, very true. So if you want your powerful impact, then you keep your last words very much to your premise. So again, always script your close. No matter what you do in between, you've got your start, it gets you settled in, and you're straight off and you're feeling comfortable. When you come to your close, a lot of people don't know how to close. If they keep talking and keep talking until they're like, I don't know what to say anymore. So script your close, and then you finish very much always on a high, on a positive, on the outcome, and on an action for people to do. So something for your presentation, that is the time. The question and answer, normally you do not have it at the close, because you don't want people to leave on random ideas. So you time in your question and answer at least 2 or 3 minutes before, and be very precise. Have people there with you that are piece of advice from me is, when you are presenting, use old shoes, or use shoes that are comfortable at least, and especially if they're on hard platforms that you're standing on. When you are preparing your material, notice here I say internalize, which is more than memorize. Like at the moment, what we're doing is, it sounds conversational. I am not having a conversation with each single person, but it is conversational. So it comes across as softer, more friendly, more open to people. Because if you memorize something, you will be thinking that through in your head. And the second line on here, be present, not perfect. Again, this is a quote directly from another mentor of mine, who is Darren LaCroix, a world champion speaker. And one of the things I found very, very important, because you making the contact with people, you don't have to be perfect. This last year, the winner of the speaker of the World Toastmaster speaking competition was from Saudi Arabia. And if you listen to his presentation, no way was it perfect. His grammar wasn't perfect, his delivery wasn't perfect, but you were there with him. You could follow everything that he was saying within the story. He took you on the journey. So don't worry about being perfect. And certainly, if you're waiting to do a presentation, don't wait until you think it is perfect, because if you do, you'll be waiting an awful long time. None of us do this on first time perfectly. Even where you do it quite a few times, the same presentation, you'll make changes, you'll tweak it, because this went well with people. People found this very difficult. So as you go along, just practice it, but be present. Don't go back into your head and think, oh, I'm on line 3 or paragraph 2. That doesn't work. Be open and talk to people about what you are doing. And don't overanalyze it, because you will get paralyzed. This is what I'm saying. Don't wait to be perfect, because it won't happen. None of us are perfect, but we do get better. Practice anywhere and everywhere. Again, you can bring your short stories into conversation with people. You can get short stories when you're listening to other people and their experience. You can borrow them. They don't have to be totally correct, but they do have to be emotionally correct, that you're using it for the same reasons. And one of the big things with a lot of my students I get is videos and record. They don't like, and I don't like video myself. I don't like to listen to myself. Well, at the end of the day, if you want somebody else to listen to you and to watch you, then you need to say that you're doing it the best you can. So video it, record it. You will be surprised at the amount of things that you can pick up, the flaws that you can pick up, that you can remedy just by watching yourself. And also, it's a great way of seeing how you are improving. So don't just delete it afterwards. When you've done it, keep a record of it, and then look back and think, yes, look how I can do this now. Oh, I used to do that. I don't do that anymore. So when you are taking everything in, then you are learning about yourself at the same time, which is really important. Visual aids are extra to your presentation. Obviously today, because of the situation being in Saudi Arabia, and we're not doing a face-on presentation. If we were, I wouldn't be using so many of the slides, but it keeps you updated with exactly what I'm talking about at the same time. So, choose carefully, and minimal is better. And picture does cover 1,000 words. Obviously, we've all been to presentations where it's overkill with PowerPoint. Tiny little writing and everybody's squinting to try and read it. It doesn't work. If somebody is looking at a PowerPoint and they are not looking at you, they can lose the point. So, one tip that is worth $1 million to you. Any presentation you are doing, if you do the B key, it takes it to blank or a black screen. When you want to get people's attention back to you, kill the screen. The screen is not the presentation, you are. So when you can put something up and give them the information, extra information to what you're talking about. When you want their attention back, kill the screen and bring the information back to you. And you will keep their attention as well. So just choose carefully. Also the font. I just want to mention here as well the font. Don't use a squirrely, beautiful, pretty font because people can't read it. So make it so that it's very easy access for people. And if you can get pictures, then great. It will tell an awful lot. Obviously, some people are not presenting on a regular basis. And again, this is a topic that I get a lot of questions about. This is why I've put this one in, because there's lots and lots of ways for you even if you are presenting in your office that you know very well, You know, you might want to change the furniture around. You might want to have some displays up. You might need your PowerPoint ready. So arrive early. Then you are not in a rush. There is nothing worse than trying to get somewhere and rush it in, and everybody is there, and you've got to prepare, and you've got to. It starts you off completely on the wrong foot. So arrive early. Check your speaking area. Again, especially if you are speaking on a platform. You know, is there any squeaky areas? Because that could be off-putting when you're talking. You know, find out how many paces you have in different directions. The last thing you need to do is fall off the edge somewhere. So just have a look at your speaking area and that is a technician, and they are run through it. Listen to the voice. Use your microphone. Also, if you're not used to using microphones, test it out for the distance of speaking. If you have the pin-on microphone, always check your battery, because so many people I've seen halfway through a presentation and the microphone's died. And it's very, very difficult to then sort of pick up and carry on, especially if you have a huge room and you can't be heard without the microphone. Also, carry a backup. Very, very recently, I was at a presentation and the gentleman was quite nervous. He came in, he'd obviously very prepared, he'd got his items, he'd set it all out, he did his tests, and he had a glass of water on the table by his laptop. And where he was very nervous, he knocked the glass of water straight over his laptop. And of course, water and laptops don't go very well. And he hadn't got a backup. So he was very, very difficult position then to actually do his presentation. So if you take a laptop or you take a tablet, or you're always back it up on a USB, because they will always have equipment to then that you can link into that as well. So it saves just any major hassles that could happen at the last minute. Have time to stop. This for me is a very, very important one. Wherever I go, just before I'm going to present, I like to have just a couple of minutes just to myself. Run through your opening. Make sure you're feeling right, all the last minute adjustments, and then you're ready to go. Also, if you're there early, you get the chance to meet and greet. One of the hardest things about speaking in public is going on and facing an audience, because it's like facing a lot of strangers. And as humans, we don't like meeting lots of strangers. We feel vulnerable. So if you've been there and you meet and greet people and you've spoken to them by name and you've got a bit of support, because these people really want you to do well. They're not there thinking, oh, we want them to fail. And if you can bring in something that you've already known about these people, great. Also, just like today, it's much, much easier for you to get an introduction. So even if you are presenting to your team, if there's new people there, you can get somebody else to introduce you, because somebody else talking about you is much easier than you just talking about yourself. One of the ways around this is to talk in the third person. And it seems a little bit strange, but it works very well. Because, for example, if I go and speak to a company and they say to me, what is the main reason we should hire you? If I say, oh, well, I'm a great speaker and I've worked many places in the world and I've worked with all sorts of different people, it sounds as if I'm bragging. Whereas if I say, well, I'm sure if you were to ask my last company, they will tell you that within 3 weeks of starting the program, 35% of their professional output had increased. So you can use it to your advantage, and it's selling yourself, but it's not making it a real hard sell. It's showing that what you have done for other people. The more you do for other people, the easier it is then for other people to see what you do. So the more prepared you are, the calmer you are. If you do not prepare, you will be nervous, because you know in your heart of heart, I have not done everything. If you do, then you know you can do it. Presenting is is easy. It's not rocket science, although it is nerve-wracking sometimes. But the most important thing is to be yourself, right? We have seen hundreds and thousands of new Tony Robbins, Jim Rowans, Patricia Fripps, and nobody is like them. But there is nobody like you either. You are the unique you. The way you present your information is brilliant because it's from you. This is where being present and not perfect is incredibly important, because you can relax. If you are trying to be somebody else or replicating somebody else, you are trying to think how they would do it. Take the pressure off. Be yourself. You can use your eyes, your bodies, your ears, because when you are presenting, you need to be aware of what your audience is doing. If you think that they are dropping off and you're losing them, you can always change your presentation because you know it well enough. Moving with purpose is incredibly important because you can do things that detract. You could have a very good presentation, but if you are wandering up and down or tapping your toe or clicking a pen or twiddling your hair, then it's very, very easy to lose your audience. This is where, when you're doing your practice with your videos, you will pick these up. Empty hands always means open gestures. Open gestures means that the audience feel as if they are with you. Time management, really, really important. Keep to the time that you are given. And just looking at that, I can see that we're coming up on time. So make sure that you are within the boundaries of what. But also, when you practice, your timing will take longer than it actually takes you on the day. So allow for time. And I'm sure this time we've come up just about, I think, on time for the question and answer. So I hope within this time we've actually got some questions coming in. Can I get any feedback on this one?
Well, thank you very much, Lindsay. Thank you very much.
Technology is wonderful.
Yeah, for the presentation, folks. We are now open for question and answers. If you have any questions, you could put it in the question box or you could raise your hand. I see there's a caller, a regular caller. Dr. Muhammad has already raised a hand. Dr. Muhammad Rishad Faridi, could you please, sir, introduce yourself again and ask the question?
Hi, I'm Dr. Rishad Faridi, and I'm an assistant professor at the Prince Satam bin Abdulaziz University in Al-Kharj. And thank you, Linda, for your great presentation. And Linda, my quick question is that I'm on being into academics, I'm interacting with the learners and students, as well as attending a lot of conferences. Now, just to have my self-evaluation done, so I perhaps I don't know how to do it. Am I improving every year, or am I like I feel from my perspective, but I think presentation will be more from the customer's perspective or the learner's perspective. So, what do you think, Linda, can be a strategy where I can know from span of time that I'm like becoming more effective presenter, or am I at the same, I maintain, or I'm deteriorating? That's my question. And the second is that at the podium, at the platform, when you're presenting, so is it important that we have to move from the audience perspective, that moving from the entering from the left side and exit from the right side, because most of us write in English like from left to right. So is it has some bearing on that? Yeah.
Right, good. Two very good questions. Okay, first of all, when obviously I'm in education a lot of the time as well. There's two different sides to that first question. One is about the evaluation from your learners, what they are gaining from what you are presenting. So obviously you do that because they then go off and they do exams and they either pass or they don't. But for yourself, you can do your own goals and aims and achievements. And again, one of these things that I said about videoing and recording your presentations, when you start listening to them back, you can tell where your improvements are. Also, there are I was going to go on to say about Toastmasters as well. This is a very, very good organisation, and they're global, and there you get a lot of info about how to progress as a speaker, as a presenter, also as a leader. So you can actually make it part of your self-development to progress in this area. So that's two sort of sides of the same question, but your learner's outcome will improve as your progress goes on as well. Right. Moving on stage, yeah, when you're obviously in Saudi Arabia, most people are reading from the other way, but generally speaking, what we do with the presentation is, yes, we work from the audience's left to right. So if you are talking about something that was at the beginning of the stage from the audience, so basically your right-hand side, and then as you progress it through, you move across until the other side, because if you move backwards and forwards, it breaks the timeline of your story.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, I could get. Thanks, Linda, for your insights. Definitely, video and rehearsing and self-evaluating will be a good checklist for my self-evaluation. I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Ali, for giving me the opportunity to answer the question.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhammad.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Being our regular caller also. So let me go to the question box. We have a question. Normally, it is recommended to sort of break the ice by showing some abstract images as your introductory slides to instantly engage the audience. What do you think about such tactics?
Is it relevant to what you're presenting? If it's not, why would you start with an abstract if it's talking about something completely different to what you're going to be presenting on? No, I don't. You could bring in something that you could start with a quote or a rhetorical question that then hooks them in a way. It doesn't have to be, but it does have to have some link. You know, personally, sometimes I use quotes from obscure people, like, for example, Captain Jack Sparrow. You know, he's not one of the most highly known philosophers, but he has a very good quote of, "The problem is not the problem. Your attitude to the problem is the problem." So then I would go on and I would discuss about what situation or what solution we were coming up with. But abstract, where it has nothing to do with what you're discussing, no, I don't think that's a very good lead-in. It's confusing.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another one. Standing behind the podium, should we hold the podium from sides with hands while addressing, or should we keep our hands on the top of the podium?
Hands for a lot of people are a lot of issue, and this I was going to come back to this. That, you know, don't stand with your hands in the hips. This is one of the things that a lot of, and especially men, do quite often. They tend to stand with their hands stuffed inside their pockets. If you are nervous and you are stood behind a podium, you tend to grip the podium as if your life depends on it. And when you do that, the tension comes up your arms, into your shoulders, into your neck. And when you're very tense, what you're doing with your throat, you're tensing up, and your speech actually becomes affected. So very often I would say to people, if you are using a podium, if it's there, you want to use it, but when you go onto your presentation, if you go onto a stage, it is your stage. If you do not want to use that on the stage, then don't use it. You know, because it is there, people tend to think, oh, it's there, I must use it. It doesn't have to be. You have to remember that, you know, that is your platform. So when you go onto it, you take charge of it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another one. It is also recommended to not to look at the projection screen ourselves while delivering the presentation. Sort of what Steve Jobs used to do, only to look at the audience rather than turning his back towards the audience. What are your views on it?
Yeah. Always, yes. One of the things never do is turn your back on the audience, and don't ever read the slides. You know, the information on the slide should back up what you are presenting. Yeah. And you know what's on the screen because you've put it there. So you should be able to talk about it without looking at it and reading it. If it's technical or if it's a lot of data that you are presenting, then use your notes. Use them in front of you and have the screen at the back. But again, if it's something that you need to get people's attention, you would put the screen up, give them some information, black the screen and speak to them. So your attention needs to be always going out the front.
Thank you very much. We have another one, a last one. Should screen notes be visible on the screen to audience? Because at times it is taken as positive to address the large audience and share your notes on the screen so they can read them.
You shouldn't need to. Well, you should, sorry, I didn't understand that. Share your notes on the screen. Was that?
I think it's a PowerPoint or the presentation notes that you can take in the footer. Right.
It depends on what your situation is. I mean, I would never put my notes up on the screen. Because normally I wouldn't work with notes. But if you have your notes, then you don't want the people. You've done your presentation. You put that up on the screen. But what you can do about handouts, I mean, if you are printing them out, you can choose, depending on your situation, your size of your audience, you can either have them handed out before you start your presentation and they can make notes as you go, which in some educational environments and things like this is what you would want them to do, especially if they've got to do maybe a test or a questionnaire at the end of it. Or you could give them hand out as they leave the room as a backup with contact details and information and things like this. So you could give them a copy of the presentation, but I wouldn't put my note or use the notes up there because that's for you to talk about other things that aren't on the presentation.
Thank you very much. Just one last question. In your views, what are some of the most common mistakes executives make while delivering the presentations?
Well, quite a few I've already mentioned there, but most people tend to under-prepare. They often speak too quickly. The biggest one, the most important one, is not being clear on the message. If they are not clear on the message, then the audience can't go. Not pausing. If you don't pause and give the audience up, then they find it very difficult. And a lot of people steal other people's information and they use it as their own. If you use information for somebody else, you've got to be willing to say this comes from wherever and give the credit back to them, because especially today information is so open. If they then go and see the information from somewhere else, as a speaker you've then lost your credibility. So make sure that if you're using something, then to be able to use it as yours, or if it's somebody else's, give credit for it as well.
Well, thank you very much, Lindsay. That really brings us towards the end of the webinar. Any concluding remarks that you would like to give before we dismiss out?
Again, just going back to words from my mentor, the last word is linger. So go back to the basis. You plan, you prepare, you practice. You plan it is messy. You prepare it, pull it together so it makes a logical order, and really, really, really practice it. So by the time you go to speak and present it, it's just part of your everyday conversation that you could talk about it anywhere to anyone, and then it would make a lot more sense to everybody. And just in case if anybody does have any more questions, I'm really open, so you can ask any questions. Just get in touch with me, either the website or through the info, and I'll be willing to answer any questions for anybody that needs to follow up on this.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for a kind gesture to show and illustrate your contact details. Folks, feel free to write to Linda if you have any further questions. But that really brings us towards the end of the webinar. I really want to thank you, Linda, on behalf of the Madinah Institute for Leadership and Entrepreneurship for your time, and delivering a very, very valuable content. Thank you very much. And thank you all of those who participated in this webinar. We are recording it. It will be uploaded on webinar.mile.org. So please stay tuned to it. With that, we'd like to end this webinar. You all will be automatically dismissed out. So you all have a good day, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're calling from. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.